Uh, if you have a Bible with you today, I want to invite you to find Ephesians chapter 4. All right, Ephesians chapter 4. Last week, we finished a series that we had been in for probably about 3 months. And it was a lot of questions from the church. Like we had people write questions in, and we responded to questions for like 3 months. And I purposely had one extra buffer week built in. Because I'm like, you know what? You just never know if one of these questions, we need to kind of take it 2 weeks instead of just 1 week. And we did have that, but then we're like, you know what? We need more than 2 weeks. We're just going to do some series following Easter. And so we were left with this 1 week. And I was like, well, we could kind of begin to look at... we can look at Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry, because there are some beautiful things that we need to, that are relevant for us today, right? Jesus is riding in, and all these people are celebrating and cheering, but they're not necessarily celebrating and cheering for him. They're celebrating and cheering their expectations of what they think he's going to do. And that's a very relevant message. How often are we excited about God when we have our expectations in our mind of what he should do in our life, and then that space between the expectations and what really happened, you're left in that spot where at this time it really just turned into this whole revolt. This is the story of the triumphal entry. It's brilliant and it's absolutely applicable to us. But here's what I want to do. As I was preparing, as I was praying for this, I actually feel like I want to go just kind of a totally different direction, not focused on the Easter season or anything like that. I actually want to go back, and I want to talk through something. We've talked about it a few times before. I've given a similar sermon. This is probably about the third time since being here talking about this. But here's what I think this is. This is crucial for us where we're going to go today. It's sort of like, I don't think this is going to be new to a lot of people, but it's a good reminder. And so it's sort of like when you go to the dentist, right? And the dentist is like, hey, you need to be flossing more. And you're like, I never knew that. You're the first person in my whole life that's told me that. No, that's not it, right? We're all like, yes, I know that. I know that I am terrible at this. And I may or may not have tried to cram in a bunch of flossing the week before I came to the dentist, because I don't want my gums to bleed and look like a noob in front of my dentist. And so there's all these different things. Or it's you go to the doctor and the doctor's like, hey, you know what? Just one more thing for you. You really should be exercising more, eating healthier, drinking more water, and getting more sleep. And you're like, yeah, I know that. This is not new information. But you need that person to kind of hit you upside the head and be like, come on, you know this, buckle down. We need to do this. You go to a financial planner and they're like, you should be saving more. Yep. All right, I know that already. I should be saving more. So that's what today is. Today's going to be a little bit, it's not crazy new information for people, but I want to be a little bit of that challenge of things that we already know, but maybe we're just kind of failing to take those steps. And so that's where I want to go today. All right, and so here's what I'd like to do. I'd love to, if you're willing and able, would you stand with me? I want to read just a little bit of scripture here. If you have a baby on your lap, you don't need to. If the baby's sleeping, I don't want to be the one responsible for you're I just got them to sleep. But if you're willing and able, let's stand. I want to read this. We're going to be Ephesians 4. It's going to be on the screen if you don't have a Bible with you, starting in verse 11. All right, so here's what this says. Now these are the gifts Christ gave to the church: the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and build up the church, the body of Christ. This will continue until we all come to such unity in our faith and knowledge of God, God's Son, that we will be mature in the Lord, measuring up to the full and complete standard of Christ. Then we will no longer be immature like children. We won't be tossed and blown about by every wind of new teaching. We won't be influenced when people try to trick us with lies so clever that they sound like the truth. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church. He makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. God, we thank you that we can just gather together this morning. Lord, as we focus in on your word, God, I pray that this would challenge us. Lord, that we'd be encouraged, but more than that, God, that we would feel challenged today. Lord, to just become more like you, to reflect you more, look like you more. And so, God, we just ask that this time, right now, you begin to work on our hearts, remove the pieces that don't look like you, and God, that we would be different when we leave here today. Jesus, we ask this in your name. Amen. All right, you guys can be seated. A little over a year ago, we had a special service. It was actually our first, what we call like together service, which is this Sunday where we're like, hey, put it on your calendars. We want everybody here. Let's get together. And so this is the first one we had done a little over a year ago. And we did this because we had a big, exciting announcement for the church. All right, and at that time, we shared that we needed to go to 2 services. All right, now that is always a hard decision to make. I've been part of churches that have made that decision before, and sometimes they've like walked it back and gone back to 1 service or this or different things. And there's always, first off, there's great things about having to go to 2 services. Like we were growing and we just couldn't fit in 1 service anymore. It also gives more flexibility for people in their schedules. And, we have some people that work at certain times. In the summer, we have a ton of people, like summer staff from Lake Beauty. And every Sunday, they have a new camp coming in. And they have a meeting at noon, right? That was hard for them to always make. But now with 2 services, it's a little bit easier. And then you have people with little kids. And, like, sometimes one works better with nap time than the other. And at my last church, we even had a Saturday night one. And that was like, between those 3, my wife could always find a service that would fit within the nap schedules. And so the flexibility is great. There's more opportunities for people to get involved. But it was also really difficult. So you don't see everybody anymore. It used to be you came to church every Sunday and you'd see everybody that is there. And now it's like, well, I kind of see them for 5 minutes as they're leaving and I'm coming in, or vice versa. And it feels like you've lost community in that. It's also, it takes twice as many people to make this happen on a Sunday morning. The amount of volunteers, the amount of nursery workers and kids' church and ushers and, all these different things. It takes twice as many people. And so for the ones who are doing a big chunk of the work, it can be really exhausting. Another difficulty when we do baptisms or child dedications, like last week, like we dedicated 4 kids, but you guys, if you were here, would have seen 2. And the other 2 happened at a different service. And we have people that, like, on baptism Sundays, they're like, I'm just going to both. I want to hear everybody's stories and I want to be there. But, like, it's difficult. But ultimately, here's the thing. We looked at the positives, we looked at the negatives, and then it wasn't, make a pros and cons list and which one had more. Ultimately, it came down to it does not matter how many negatives there are and how big they are. Because if we didn't do it, we were going to be unable to be on the mission that God's given us as a church. And that is sharing Jesus with people, seeing people experience him and grow. And the reality is we didn't have any more room. We had 5 months straight of being over capacity in our parking lot. Like every week we had too many cars for our parking lot and adding chairs and things. It wasn't working anymore. And so we had to make some changes. We had to do something. Growing is never comfortable. That's why it's called growing pains. Growth always means change. You cannot grow and not change. But so many of us struggle with change. Right? Like we like things being the way that they are. It's the way that I know it. I don't like change. But the hard thing for us is we had to change, or we had to stop doing what God had called us to do. And so that was an easy choice for us. Now, that was all kind of in regards to our church having to change because of things going on. What I want to do today is I want to take a little bit of this same idea, and I want to give it to us and let us apply this individually to each one of us. All right? Instead of talking about the greater church as a whole, what does this look like for me? So I think essentially we need to be asking ourselves like this question: am I growing spiritually? Or have I become stagnant in my spiritual life. And if I'm growing, that means that I am leaving my comfort zone regularly. Right? And that's the hard piece there. But for so many people, we value our comfort much higher than we value growth. Right? Like we put a ton of time, a ton of money. Think of how much money we spend on being comfortable in life. We want to be comfortable. This is like our focus so often. And so what I want to do right now is I want to look at some of what Paul said to the church in Ephesus and how this can still challenge us today, okay? Because this whole chunk that we read, this is all about spiritual growth. It's about growing. It's about what happens as we kind of move through that season of growth. But we're going to look at how this applies to us as an individual, all right? So here's the first thing. When we look at this passage, here's what we understand from Paul. Spiritual growth happens primarily in community. All right? Spiritual growth happens primarily in community. It's easy to think that spiritual growth is something that like we just do on our own. And I think this is because, like, for a long time, if you think about going to school, like school, yeah, you're like maybe in a class with other people, but a lot of the growing that you'd maybe do at school, a lot of the learning, I think we often think of it as an individual thing. All right, like we think of it as, well, I go to school and I need to work on my grades and I do my homework and I get this individual grade and all of this is me. And now, so that's where we now have, a ton of like online schooling where kids are doing that for high school, okay? And so then it is this like individual type growth. So then we take this understanding of the education system and we transfer it over to our spiritual growth and think this is an individual thing. That I just need to read my Bible, I just need to pray, I need to think about, my thoughts, I need to focus in, and I need to change my actions, and I'm going to grow. But that isn't what we see, that we can do this on our own. Spiritually, this all plays out in community. At minimum, we need other people in order to live out and practice the growth that is happening. So I want us to kind of just look at these verses. They are focused on spiritual growth, all right? But pretty much every one of these at some level has community going on in it. Okay, and so like the first few verses here, the gifts that are given, they aren't given to an individual. They're given to the church. An individual is kind of the vehicle of bringing that gift to the church. It's a communal thing. And then they're practiced, by individuals, but in community for the sake of the church. None of the gifts listed here can be utilized or benefited from like just yourself on an island. This is all about community, about working together with others. And when you receive a gift, it says it's now your responsibility to benefit the community, to benefit the church with that gift. And this will, in turn, lead to closer unity, right? Like it's easy to have unity when it's me, myself, and I. Because hopefully I'm not disagreeing with anybody then. It's just me. Doesn't matter how wild my opinion is, it's just me. If Paul's talking about unity, obviously he's saying this is not just you. There are other people that you are growing with, that you are doing this with, and unity needs to be present. Paul talks about being taught, being influenced, speaking truth in love, fitting the parts of the body together. And as you do your part, it says it will help others grow so that the whole body is healthy. There's nowhere in this picture here that can be done on our own. This is all about community. You will hit a ceiling in your spiritual growth if you try to stay in isolation or even if you stay on the fringe of community. There are some parts that we can do on our own. There are ways that on our own we can do practices, we can grow, we can do these different things. But if we then remain on our own, all of that growth that has happened in our life, everything that's changed, it's going to shrivel up and it's going to change back. You're going to lose that growth. We have to be able to live them out in community. The problem is we treat church, we treat our faith community like just another addition on the a la carte of our busy calendar. And part of that's because we think about church as an event on Sunday morning. And if that's the case, then church is just another event. All right? That's all it is. But instead, we need to remember that the church is not an event, it's people. It's friends, it's faces. It's people that we can be vulnerable with, that we can share our best moments with. We can celebrate like we did last week with child dedication. We can stand alongside other families and celebrate this step that they're taking. It's also a community where when something terrible is happening, that we can gather together. That at a funeral, when someone's mourning, when they're grieving, or just on a Sunday morning, like they've had a hard week, that we can gather together and say, hey, we're here for each other. Not many of us need more events on our calendar, but I would argue that most of us probably need more relationships in our life. All right, but church doesn't move from an event to faces and relationships just by showing up on Sundays. If your involvement consists of coming on a Sunday, you will reach a point where it starts to feel like you're hitting a ceiling. What was once maybe exciting and felt like life change starts to just feel like another thing that you do. All right, and here's the thing, like this happens so often. Someone comes and they're like, oh, this is great, I'm excited. Okay, and I'm just going to use that example because if you're here, that means you came back, or maybe it's your first time, all right? Because if they came and they didn't like it, they're not here. They're like, that was terrible, I'm leaving. All right, but if you're here, then probably you're like, all right, I want to be part of this, at least at some capacity. But over time, if that's all we do, it's going to lose its excitement. If that's what we're letting church be, it's an exciting thing for me, and this new change in my life is exciting, and we're driven by excitement, that will die out every time. Every time it dies out. And what often happens then is if they still want to have some type of faith community, they'll say, I don't really feel like I'm being fed anymore. It doesn't feel the same as it once did, and so I'm going to move from this church and I'm going to go to this church. That's not, people switch churches for many reasons, but sometimes this is what will happen in this situation. And they go there and like, this is great, this is exciting, I love it. But guess what's going to happen? If that's the level that they stay at, guess what's going to happen? It might be 3 months, it might be 6, it might be a year, it might be 5 years. Eventually the same thing. It's going to lose its excitement. So if that's the motivator, it's going to disappear. And so that can't be what we're chasing in this. It takes you taking a step in and putting yourself in situations and places where you can meet people, you can get to know them, you can share about yourself, you can grow in relationship. In the New Testament, the word that they'd often use in Greek is koinonia, and it's often translated as fellowship. It's a word that you really, for the most part, just hear inside the church. Like there's a few other spots that use it, but fellowship is kind of a Christian phrase. And fellowship, the koinonia, what it means is participation, sharing, communion, in common. Like communion, not as like taking the elements, but just like community, communal, doing this together. And the word is primarily used to talk about our relationship with God the Father, God the Son, the Holy Spirit. But it's also used in regards to how we interact with each other as believers. And this was a core foundation of the early church, of followers of Jesus. In Acts, actually, when it says like what the early church devoted themselves to, 4 things, and this was one of them. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, koinonia, breaking of bread together, and prayer. Those were the 4 things that they devoted themselves to. And it's what we are called to do with each other. And I realize like it may come more naturally for some than others. All right, but please don't use that as an excuse. We are all made for relationships. It doesn't matter if you're extroverted or introverted. What God said is it isn't good for humans to be alone. We need relationship. We need community. We need this place where we can come together and we can be together. We can have those relationships. So what I want to do, I want to show you a picture on the screen here in a moment. It's a picture we use in like Alpha a lot. It's one of our small groups. And I'm going to have you guys kind of go through this and look at this picture and do this. Okay, it's a cartoon picture of a swimming pool. And it's got all sorts of different people there. They're doing all sorts of different things. Okay, so take a look at this picture. If the pool represents church or community at the church, like community, spiritual growth within community, all of those things, that's what the pool represents. Which person are you? All right, and you got all sorts of different people doing all sorts of different things. And I love this because people will pick different people for totally different reasons. All right, but you have some people who are in the pool. You got a guy like swimming laps, like looking serious. Someone doing handstands in the corner, all right? I don't know if that's just because they're so excited to be in the pool or they're just, whatever it is. You have someone who's sitting in the pool just like leisurely, like just enjoying like that moment. You got somebody in the corner that's drowning, all right? Like, maybe you're like, yep, that's me. I relate to that one. I'm at church. I'm trying my best, but I'm drowning, and you don't. Whatever that may be. Then you have some people who are on the edge of the pool or about to like get into the pool. You can see that's their direction. You got somebody on the diving board. Like they are about to go head first into this pool, all in. You have somebody else who's kind of dipping a toe in off to the side. Like, I don't know, I'm a little hesitant. Like, what is it like? What's the temperature right now? You have someone else walking in out of the like locker room with all the gear on. They got everything to look the part, but they aren't in the water yet. You have some people who are observing, just wanting to be part, maybe wanting to be part of it, but they're speculating everything. You have someone who looks like they just got out of the pool, and they're actually pretty hesitant. Looks like maybe they didn't have a good experience as they look at the pool. And then you have some people who are at the pool, but not engaged at all, right? Like my favorite, the guy like standing in front of the mirror just flexing his muscles. That's why he's at the pool. You have some gals chatting away. You have one guy who's working so much that you're like, why are you even there? Why are you going to go to the pool if you're just going to sit over in the corner and not even, you might as well be somewhere else. You have another who's a lifeguard, but not engaged at all. Like, I don't know what to make of that. Like, I love this picture because there's all these different characters. So, which one are you? And why? Like, when you look at that and you're like, okay, if the pool is community, spiritual growth through community, church, which one are you? And why are you there? And maybe you want to write that down in Alpha. We'll kind of go around and be like, all right, hey, who do you associate with? And, oh, this one. Okay, well, why'd you pick that one? And you'll hear all sorts of different reasons. Maybe you want to share with somebody that you're here with today of which one you are. Maybe you want to just kind of jot it down and think about this. And then my follow-up question is this. Are you happy with which one you are? Or do you find yourself wishing that you were somebody else at the pool? And let me let you in on a little secret here. You can change. You might be one of those, but who's stopping you from saying, you know what? I'm way off on the side and I just have nothing to do with this, but man, I wish I were the one that's at least dipping a toe in, or maybe on the diving board, or I wish I really were in this. You know, where are you at? There's another visual I've used before to talk about community. And originally when I was writing this message, my plan was to go in depth in this at a greater level than we usually do. I used it a little over a year ago when we were doing the Together Sunday. And it's these 5 circles of community. That there's kind of, with every community, there's these 5 layers of this. And everybody in Long Prairie or in the area falls into one of these 5 because the outermost one, community, is just anybody who could even possibly be part of the community, but they aren't. And so my plan was to go through each one of these in more depth and kind of share what they are and like, hey, if you're part of the congregation, this is what that looks like. If you're part of the core, this is what that looks like. But I'll tell you what, I wrote it multiple times, and every time I just was like, I don't like this. And here's why. Because it wasn't that it's not valid or that it's not important. I think it is. But I was concerned that what I'm trying to do was going to be missed. And that people might think that I'm doing something else. That what I'm trying to do by saying, hey, if you're at this level, then you're doing this, and this, and everybody should be taking a step in wherever you're at, that someone's going to walk away just saying, man, this is just like a sales pitch of him trying to get people more involved at church. And that is, hear my heart, that is not what today is. And so I'm just not even going to go into this as much as I kind of wanted to, because I think that misses it. And so, instead, here's what I want to do. I don't want us walking out of here thinking that this is a self-serving or church-serving like focus. This is about you, me, us, trying to be more spiritually healthy. And that's needed for all of us. Because our world has some problems. And that might be like the biggest understatement I've ever said into this microphone. All right? Our world has some problems. But there's one in particular that I think matters today for this. There's a health insurance company that had done a nationwide survey of like 20,000 people, which maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but understand, I think for most surveys to be like a professional survey, you have to have, there's a minimum number, and it's actually like just over like 1,000. All right, and from that, they have found they can determine actually with accuracy a whole group, a whole country, things like that. So this is 20,000 people. It's a big survey. And this is what the survey tells us. 54% of Americans say that nobody knows them well. Over half of Americans think that nobody, I mean, this survey is going to include married people, where you would hope that maybe you would think that your spouse knows you well. I mean, you have parents and siblings, but 54% say nobody knows me well. They don't know me. They don't know the real me. Maybe you put on a mask, or you do this, or no one's gotten to know me. Nobody knows me well. 36%, over a third, said they feel lonely frequently or almost all of the time. Over a third feel lonely almost all of the time. Like, think about that. You're going to go through your entire life, how many years, how many decades, feeling lonely almost all of the time. And this number of 36, it jumps to 51% for young mothers. Young mothers, 51%. And then it actually jumps to 61% for young adults. The generation that is more connected than any other generation is the most lonely. Loneliness has been linked to everything from anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, heart disease, cancer, dementia. We are more connected than any other time in history, and yet more lonely than ever before. And some of the times when you feel most alone, like I think often if you think of someone who's lonely, you might get that image in your head of an 80-year-old woman that's stuck on the 20th floor of an apartment building in New York and can't leave the place, and they're just there by themselves. I think the more accurate depiction is someone sitting in a room with a lot of people who just feels really, really alone. And actually, the feelings of loneliness are exponential because you're surrounded by people and you think that you should be connected, but you just don't feel it. And so listen, when I say it isn't enough to just come to church on Sundays, it isn't enough to just sporadically come when there isn't anything else going on. It's because Sundays isn't where we build community or get to know each other on a deeper level or honestly grow deeper spiritually. It isn't. I love Sundays. Sundays are great. I love gathering together. I hope that we feel challenged when we walk out of here, but that is not the place that this is going to primarily happen, because what's happening right now? You're sitting in a room full of people. How many of them are you talking to? None. You're just sitting and listening to me. Or maybe you're like jabbing the person next to you and talking, and you're like, ah. But for the most part, like this is not a time right now. No one in this room is building community. That happens in relationship. It happens in dialogues, not monologues. It happens in life groups, and it happens on serve teams. But more than that, it happens at lunch after church. When you say, hey, we're going to go out for lunch. Let's grab another family. Let's grab another person. Let's go. I grew up remembering we didn't go out to eat a whole lot, but lots of times it was on Sundays. And I think that was intentional, to purposely grab other families, other people, and be like, hey, let's go get lunch. Let's spend time together. It happens on Friday nights at somebody's house, playing games and eating dinner. It happens at life events like weddings and funerals and graduations and birthday parties, because it happens when we live life together. One of my favorite scripture verses is 1 Thessalonians 2:8. And Paul and Silas and Timothy, they're talking and writing to the church in Thessalonica, and they're talking about the relationship that they have with the people in that church there, and they say this line. They say, we loved you so much that we shared with you not only God's good news, but our own lives too. That seems to be a deeper level than just sharing God's good news. That we would open up our lives and share our lives with each other. So whether we're talking about loneliness and how do we fix that, or our own spiritual growth, or other people's spiritual growth, as we saw in the passage in Ephesians, or spiritual gifts like we talked about a few weeks ago, like everything in that comes back to community. And I get it, community is hard. People are difficult. Pastor Corey over in Sauk Center, he always says this line, and I think he says it because it makes me laugh, so he just keeps saying it. He'll just be like, people is dumb. We've been there, right? Community's hard. People are hard. And I can guarantee this. If you step into community, you will get hurt. Because if you step into a relationship, you will get hurt. But hear me, when the answer is not removing relationships and community from your life, because that only results in being lonely. You know, it's kind of that adage of like, hey, in order to feel loved and to love somebody, you got to put yourself out there. There's got to be the chance of getting hurt. Because if you are too guarded to ever get hurt, you're going to be too guarded to ever build a relationship. And as you get hurt, it's actually up to you whether you get offended. Are you going to let that hurt fester and grow, and you're going to ruminate on it, you're going to think about that over and over? Yeah, you're going to become offended. Or, this is why the Bible talks about this so much, are you going to go to a person, are you going to share what hurt you? Are you going to talk about it? The Bible's always talking about reconciliation in various ways. Paul's talking about unity and how important it is. But for us Minnesotans, you know, someone hurts us and it's like, well, I'm just going to spend $5 less on you at Christmas and we'll see how that feels. And I'll do that for the next 20 years. Because we just don't want to, we don't know how to go and have a direct conversation and say something and clear the air and reconcile and be able to move forward. At our Alpha weekend yesterday, we do like a Saturday away. We were out at Lake Beauty. Everyone kind of shared a little bit of their background and how they found God and how they maybe started coming to the church and stuff. And we heard stories of people's background and people experiencing God and experiencing community. And a lot of it was like these great, like awesome stories of community, of like, I felt welcomed in this, but not all of them. Some of them were stories of hurt at the hands of community, at the hands of our community. But it's so important that I want to challenge us to just say, this is so needed. Keep trying. Continue to try. So I'm going to say it this way. It's not going to always be perfect. It's not going to be perfect here. We will get it wrong. We will miss moments when somebody walks through our doors and they desperately need to connect with somebody, and they walk through the doors of a church trying, hoping, praying to get that connection, and we miss it. It'll happen. We will fail at being the perfect community for everyone. We just will. But we can try to be a good community for as many as we can. And we aren't a good community because a pastor says we are. We're not a good community because 10 or 20 people say, I want to do this. Like this happens when a community says, this is what it means to be part of this, and I want to be engaged, I want to be involved, I want to be part of this. And it happens when we step out of our comfort zone. It happens when we walk over to someone that we don't know their name, even though we feel embarrassed and we feel like we should know their name, and we're willing to just, swallow that and say, okay, give me your name one more time. Listen, I have never once been offended. Okay, I should probably clarify that. Like, let's be honest, if my wife were like, what's your name again? Like that would be a little hard. But for the most part, like I'm not great with names. And so it's actually really like a relief when someone walks up and asks me what my name is, because now I have an open door to be like, thank God, because what's your name? And it's hard as a pastor. I got to meet all you guys, and it's hard. It's the hardest part of the job, remembering names. But it matters. Having community, being close with people. Because community helps us grow spiritually. It helps others grow spiritually. We can celebrate together. We can grieve together. And it only works when the whole community says, this is what we want to be. This is bigger than myself, and I want to be part of it. So I'm going to give you a couple practical steps here, kind of in closing. And so let's stand even. Ushers at this time, hopefully, maybe Brad didn't say this to you. Whoever's ushering today. We have some slips on the back corners of the sound booth. And I'm going to have you guys hand those out down every row so that everybody gets one of those slips. All right? And so maybe Pastor Aaron will even grab some and help you guys out so it's not quite as long. All right? Now, on this slip, it's going to list off a bunch of the different ministry teams that we have here at the church. Now, again, I'm going to do this because I think this is important. All right, I said I didn't want to do the I'm just trying to get people involved. But understand, life groups are great. I love them. They're a great way to build relationship. The problem is they happen once every 4 months. And if you miss it, then you're like, oh, great, I guess I have to wait 4 months to make a friend. And that's not right. So the great thing about serve teams, you can jump in almost any time. And so I want to just kind of throw this out. If you've been coming here and you're not part of a serve team, I want to challenge you to take that step. Because it builds relationship. You serve most of them, it's once a month. And for a lot of them, it's once a month at one of the services. And so if you're like, well, I don't want to miss church. And you're trying to maybe that's an excuse and you're just trying to be extra holy. You're like, well, I really don't want to miss church. Here's the thing. You actually can just go to the other service. Serve at one and then go to the other one. And so maybe you want to serve at the service that you don't normally attend. So if second is your regular service, serve at first service once a month. Or maybe this is really crazy, serve at this service, and then once a month go to the other one and meet somebody new that you don't know. But there's just these ways that I think we need to focus of how are we building community? How are we bringing and creating relationships? Now, here's the thing. You shouldn't need us to facilitate this. You don't. But I also know that for some of us, it's hard, and we want that. We want someone else to facilitate it, to give us the first steps, to do these different things. And so here's your first steps. A serve team. Find a place that you can just be part of a small little team that you get to know and you serve with. And you serve with all the same people on the same week of the month, and you're like, now I'm getting to know them. I see them. If it's your first time here, that's fine. You can start serving next week if you want. Well, if we have some openings, we'll figure it out. If you're really new and you're like, I'm struggling to meet new people, perfect. You're on the greeter team now. There was a church I was part of. I literally watched a pastor meet someone who walked through the door for the first time. He said, hey, that's awesome. Do you want to greet next week? And this is like a church of 5,000 people. And I was like, oh, all right. He's like, well, why not? Do you want to get to know people? Be a greeter. You're going to meet everybody. It works perfect. There's just ways to get involved. And then I know some of us were like, we're a little bit more, we want to be more background. And there's ways to do that too. Even just like our cafe, we have people, and it builds relationships with the people you're interacting with. We have people that are baking that food that all the kids come and ravage every Sunday. And we're like, oh, I thought I'd have a cookie, but I guess not. There's all sorts of different ways. But it is so much bigger than that. I really want to challenge you to just start to have people over. Go out to lunch. After church today, grab somebody and say, hey, let's go out to lunch. You're not going to build relationship if you don't put yourself out there and you don't try. And it just leaves us in a really, really lonely place. Hang out with people, eat meals together, play games, go hunting or fishing with somebody. All right, now I get it. We have a ton of people that love to go fishing. Take somebody fishing with you. If you are that worried about your secret fishing hole, put a blindfold on them. I don't know. All right, but it's not the end of the world to have somebody that knows where you fish. All right, and if you disagree, then all right, use a blindfold and just do it anyways. Have community. And lastly, I'm going to say this, because it's part of spiritual growth, and it's more of a community thing than we want to admit. I want to challenge you to be part of a community financially. I know this is where some people get uncomfortable, but listen, be generous. Be a giver. Give to missions. Have a heart for God's house. Be part of that. Because there's something that happens inside of us, spiritual growth-wise, when the thing that the world tells you will never have enough of, when we begin to relinquish that, something happens. Let me just tell you, something happens. This is not about our church growing or trying to get more people here or anything. This is about, I want you to thrive. And I want you to thrive mentally and emotionally and relationally and spiritually. And let me just tell you, community is the foundation of all of that. It is. It is. All right. We're going to pray. There's going to be a prayer team that'll be in front, in back. We're going to sing one more song. And then I need to give you a little bit of direction for the chaos afterwards, all right? It's a missions marketplace. Kids have done different things. They're raising money to give to missions. None of this is going back in their pocket or anything. In fact, I'll speak as a family that was part of this. The families are putting money and time into this to make whatever it is that they're selling, things like that. You'll go to a table, you'll write down like your name if you want something there and just how much you're going to give so that each kid kind of knows a little bit of how much they were able to do for missions. But then actually you're just going to take the item, you got to remember how much, walk over to Pastor Aaron and you can pay her. And there's cash, there's actually card as well. So like you want to pay any way like that. All right, there's no prices. It's all just whatever you want to give. Don't feel like you have to be part of this, but maybe walk around and kind of, humor the kids and talk with them and just ask them questions, whatever it might be, all right? So that's happening outside these doors afterwards. Let's pray. Let's close. Let's sing. God, we thank you for a community. God, I pray right now, though, for the people in the room that they feel like they are part of that statistic. That they walk through the doors and they're sitting in a room with a bunch of people talking about community and trying not to be lonely, and yet they're sitting here saying, I feel so alone and unseen. God, I pray right now that your presence would just surround them. God, that they would just feel peace. They would feel love. They would feel that there is something more. God, I pray that you give us eyes to see when people are hurting, when they're struggling, that we wouldn't just be so quick to run and say hi to the people we know right away or go find our chair or do our usual thing. Instead, we would have eyes, Lord, that are seeing people and what they need, and we're stepping out of our comfort zone. We're going, we're talking, we're having conversations, we're inviting people out. God, whatever this looks like, help us to be a better community. God, help us to be a place that is fighting against things like loneliness. God, help us to grow closer to you. Jesus, we ask all of these things in your name.